Hey there, Bible buddies. Oh, I got a doozy of a reviewsy for yousy today. I thought I would conquer the almost insurmountable task of comparing the various sizes of Bibles that Cambridge produces. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. I don't know how to even approach this, so I'm just going to kind of fly by the seat of my pants like I usually do. Um, so the way that I thought I would kind of start is I'll start with the smallest edition, which is a Pitt Minion. And I'll kind of cycle through all the various editions and I'll just kind of compare the size of the Bible and the text with kind of the next size up. And I am going to leave a Concord here because I feel like the Concord is like smack dab in the middle of all the sizes of Cambridge Bibles. So I'm going to leave a Concord here kind of as a running size reference for everything. And like I said, we'll start with the Pitt Minion and we'll just go from there and see how this goes. I'm sure it's going to be a crazy time. So I hope you guys enjoy this. It has been quite a labor of love to gather all of the various Cambridge editions. I don't know that I'm going to keep them all. Maybe I'll keep one of each. I don't know. But they are all going to be in black goat skin, so at least they'll be similar, kind of look and feel. You can kind of compare the grains, etc. And I'll try and remember to show like the ribbons also. It's not going to be like an in-depth thing. It's just going to be more to compare the sizes and maybe like the font sizes on the interior real quick. So yeah, let's get rolling, Bible buddies. So we'll start here with the Pitt Minion. And I think I have a review on this. I don't even know. I don't really remember what I have reviews on and what I don't. If I don't have a review on it, there will be a review at some point done on it. So if you could, please just bear with me. So we have the Pitt Minion here, which is Cambridge's smallest offering, aside from like, the Pocket Edition and maybe like the Transettos. But this is kind of maybe the smallest readable size. I know that Pocket Edition is like teeny tiny by comparison, and it's very hard to read. From there, we will step up to the Cameo, I believe. Let me peek right quick, but I think this is the Cameo. Yeah, so this is the Cameo. So you can see here that the Cambridge Pitt Minion and the Cameo are exactly the same size footprint, right? They're the same height and width. The key difference is going to be the thickness between the two. And I would say definitely upgrading to the Cameo is going to be quite a benefit from the Concord. And we'll take a look here, or from the Concord, from the Pitt Minion. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of name confusion. And we'll take a look here as to why. So we'll open up the Cameo here, and we'll open up the Pitt Minion. Now, mind you, this is not a King James Version Pitt Minion. I don't have one, unfortunately, but this is a new King James Version, and we can certainly just take a look to compare the two. Obviously, the size, the font size, and the format and layout is going to be the same between the New King James and the King James Version. So one thing to note that you can see right out the gate is this font is considerably thicker and darker than this font. Now, the thing is, this is an older typesetting, so it doesn't have the nice crispness that the newer typesettings have. This is kind of just an older style, back when they were still using actual like printing plates instead of like a digital deal. So you're going to have a little bit more variation between kind of the widths and the thicknesses of everything. And to me, this just gives it more of a classic look and feel. I prefer this, to be honest with you. I love vintage Bibles, obviously. So I prefer more kind of traditional looks and layouts like this. But the font size is considerably larger than the Pitt Minion, and you still do get the suite of references here. So if personally, if it were me, I would opt for the slightly thicker Cameo instead of the Pitt Minion. If you're a font of this kind of thicker font, I know sometimes people will say that like thicker fonts are kind of harder on their eyes. In that case, I might, I don't know, I don't know, because this is such a small font. So there's that. So there we have the Pitt Minion done. So Pitt Minion there, and we'll hold on to the Cameo, and we will go on now to the Clarion. Now the Clarion is it's kind of a single column paragraph layout. But we'll compare the two here. So this is the Cameo on top and the Clarion. And you'll see that as far as height goes, they are the same height. But width-wise, they're slightly different. The Clarion is a little bit wider than the Cameo here. So you can see that difference. And we'll take a look at the thickness as well. Now, mind you, this is a New American Standard and King James Version. I'm working under the assumption that the thicknesses of the editions will be relatively close in size, so you can just kind of make the general assumption that a Cameo, oh, I'm gonna bugger this up, that a Clarion will be thicker than a Cameo, right? You can just kind of make that general assumption there. and I would imagine you would be safe. So let's go ahead and take a look and open them up. And actually, I got to circle back and look at the ribbons real quick on the last one, but we'll look. So here's the Cameo. There's the Cameo text. Let me see if I can turn it maybe a little bit further to keep it open. Whoop! There we go. And then we will look at the Clarion here. And then there you can see they're really two different approaches to the Bible. You have your double column verse by verse, and then you have your single column paragraph format. This might not be the best place to view that. There we go. So it's a single column paragraph. And also, this is obviously a newer typesetting, so it uses the digital font instead of this older font. And then the references have been moved to the outer side here for the Clarion. So just of note. Now the font size between the two is pretty similar. Granted, this is a darker font only because the letters are thicker, whereas the Clarion here, it's like I said, it's that newer typesetting, so the font is a little bit thinner and a little bit more streamlined and kind of cleaned up versus this older font. But just two things to kind of notice there. I guess it depends if you're a single column fan or a double column fan. To me, this single column kind of verges on being a little too wide for me. I tend to get lost, especially if I'm reading at night, and I tend to do a lot of my Bible reading at night. So if I get to a point, I'll find that I kind of get a little lost and I end up reading the same lines over and over again. So just an aside, my preference. So actually, we will take a look at the ribbons. The ribbons on Cambridge Bibles are unanimously meh. I think on the Topaz is about the only one where they stepped it up. But just to kind of take note here, there's 2 red ribbons on the Clarion. There are 2 red ribbons on the Cameo, and there is only a single red ribbon on the Pitt Minion. So there's that. And let's keep this Clarion front and center. Now, the next step up from the Clarion is going to be the Concord. So we'll take a look at that. This Concord is a King James Version Concord. I don't think they make the Concord in anything other than the King James Version. But everything else is the same, and we will take a look at this font. Now, this Concord is a newer typesetting, so the font is much easier to read than the... here we go again, I'm going to be forgetting it all the time. Than the Cameo. So it's kind of an updated version of the Cameo. So you can see, let me try and get these out of the way just a little bit here so we can get some apples to apples. There we go. So you can see this font is still darker than the Clarion font. And it has been cleaned up considerably. You don't get kind of the thickness variations that you do in the Cameo with the Concord. So it is kind of nicer in that regard. And the font here is substantially bigger, or at least darker. Maybe not substantially bigger, but it's slightly bigger than the Clarion, but noticeably darker in the Clarion. And then here we have the return to the center column references. So just an aside, I will look only because the Concord is such a good model. Let's look at the differences here. Now you can see that the Cameo has a considerably thicker font versus the Concord. So there is that to contend with. And the font size does look to be pretty similar as far as, size-wise. But definitely thicker here with the Cameo. And why not, right? We'll look at the Pitt Minion. We already have everything out. Why not? But yeah, there's that diminutive little Pitt Minion. So definitely, if you're looking for a larger font, I would go with than the Pitt Minion. I would go with the Cameo or the Concord if you're looking for like a darker, larger font. Now let's compare the sizes right quick. And on the Concord, you have 2 black ribbons there. So, and for size-wise, there is a considerable size difference here. You can see they're definitely taller, right? The Concord is definitely taller and definitely wider than even the Clarion. And as far as thickness is concerned, it's much thinner, the Concord, than the Clarion. Much thinner. So actually, let's compare the Concord with the other 2 again, just because this is like the middle Bible here, the middle child. So much taller than the Cameo, wider than the Cameo, and ever so slightly thinner than the Cameo. And as far as the Pitt Minion goes, it's night and day difference. Definitely. Way taller, much wider, and a good bit thicker than the Pitt Minion. So, interesting to note. Now I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the larger format Bibles. If you will give me a second, we'll take a look at them. So I was having a little bit of issue getting all the big boys onto the table, so we're just going to go one at a time for this round. So we still are continuing with the Concord here as a size comparison standard. And then right here we have the Topaz, which is Cambridge's kind of newest offering. And I will at some point do an in-depth review on this. Sorry, we're just going to kind of do a quick flyby here. But you can see the size difference here between the two. This is kind of their full size line, the Topaz. So you can see it is considerably taller and a good bit wider also. And then as far as thickness goes, it's ever so slightly thinner, which is interesting to note. But they're very, very similar in thickness, very close. Also to note is these nice ribbons. Finally, Cambridge upped their ribbon game on this edition. They also went with a leather liner, which is nice. All the other liners, I hate to say, are synthetic. And they finally upped to a leather liner in this edition, and it makes like a night and day difference. I really wish they would do this with all their editions instead of that synthetic liner. There's some things that Cambridge skimps on, and I really just do not understand why they do it. Ribbons and liner are probably the two biggest things, especially considering the price that they charge for these Bibles. Skylar does a much better job. we'll just say that with their finishing. But you have nicer ribbons on this one. These are double satin ribbons, and you get 3 of them in this edition versus the 2 kind of fabric ribbons. So we'll leave that one on the right, and let's pop this guy open here. So again, this is the Topaz. Trying to get in between the ribbons here so I don't have to untuck them. There we go. So the Topaz, nicely, it's a very large format, double column, verse by verse. There's no poetic settings. I mentioned before that they omit the pilcrows in this edition. For some reason, I have no idea. So you have no idea. You have no way of telling where the paragraphs start. But there are the red highlights, which is nice. And you do get the outer margin for the cross references. Now, personally, I would put the cross references on the inner margin, only because I don't like having the biblical text kind of like rounding into the gutter. And if you were to swap these, it would move the biblical text over and out of the gutter, which would have been nicer. But hey, I don't work for Cambridge, so just my 2 cents. All right, and then we open up the Concord to compare. We can see obviously the Topaz is a much larger font than the Concord, and the Topaz isn't quite as dark as the Concord, but it's dark in its own right. It's certainly not a light font like the Clarion. It's a much nicer, darker font and larger, like I said. And it's a more modern layout. So it's you have a serif font here with sans serif numbers. It looks like here for the verses. You do have kind of the red callouts. The omission of the pilcrows is kind of a miss, but here's your comparison. So if you're looking for something with a larger font than the Concord here, and you're okay with having this very large size and large format Bible, definitely this would be a way to go. So we'll take a look next at the Turquoise. And actually, I'm going to leave this one here only because the Turquoise is very similar, at least for KJV. It's similar in size. So this is the Turquoise, and oh, I love that leather. It's very nice, deep grain. And this Turquoise is, oh look, it actually has a liner, not a synthetic liner. Okay, go Turquoise. It's your birthday. All right, so Turquoise. We'll do a size comparison between this one. And you'll see that there is a very, let's scoot this guy over just a hair. My phone's going to die, so I got to hurry this up. You'll see that the size comparison is, it's spot on, really. They really have a very similar footprint. It looks as though what is this? This is the Topaz. This Topaz is ever so slightly wider, but they're the same height. And as far as thickness goes, they're very similar in thickness. The King James or the Turquoise seems to be slightly thicker than the Topaz. So let's look at this Turquoise. I love the Turquoise personally. It's one of my favorites as far as verse by verse goes. It is beautiful, just so classic, such a classic setting. So we will look at. Oh, and with the Turquoise here, you get 2 ribbons, nice ribbons too. Just an aside, but you have this very nice old school layout. This is similar to the Cameo in that it's kind of like the very traditional kind of printing press method of printing. So you have very, very dark text, very large size, and just dark and large, and a little bit of variation between thickness here and there. But it's endearing to me. I love this layout. It's a very nice layout. We'll take a look here at the comparison between the two. Certainly I'm starting to get confused because there's so many. Topaz, Turquoise. Okay, so certainly the Turquoise is maybe a smidge larger font than the Topaz, but definitely darker than the Topaz. So there's, I mean, it's like a night and day difference here between the two, as far as darkness is concerned. So if you're King James, I think that they just released the Topaz. If not, they're getting ready to release the Topaz in King James version. So this would be a good comparison for you guys if you're interested in one of the two large format editions, which one to kind of run with there. So it would really just be your choice. If you prefer kind of this older look like I do, this vintage look, then I would definitely recommend going with the Turquoise. If you prefer a newer, cleaner font, go with the Topaz. So, and then obviously it goes back to the center column references here instead of the exterior for the references. So, and let's take a look at the Concord right quick as far as size comparison goes. And you will see also that the layout is very similar between the Concord and the Turquoise, which is nice. There you are. So very similar. Again, the Concord seems to be a little bit more cleaned up than this. It could just be my eyes, though. This is certainly a slightly larger font, and it appears to be slightly darker, but that might just be because it is larger. So, but a very nice comparison there. So at least as far as the size difference goes, if you're looking for a more portable size, I would recommend the Concord. We'll take a quick look at the size between the two. Certainly much larger in every dimension, with the exception of thickness. It's only slightly thicker. So there we go. Let's get everybody back in frame here. Get these guys scooted over. Actually, I will stick with the... Who's sticking around? Turquoise. It's a guessing game. All right, very last one we have here. Now, this obviously isn't the last one. You know, I don't have a pocket edition, and I don't plan on getting it because the font's too small for me, and I don't have a Transetto. I don't plan on getting one of those either. And I have, you know, Cambridge makes a couple like oddball editions, like the NRSV. They have a couple that don't really fit in with these models. They're just kind of one-offs. And I have the NRSVs. I'll have to just do separate videos of them because, again, they're kind of one-offs. They're kind of their own thing. So we have the wide margin here, and this is a new King James Version wide margin. Go ahead, and I will put a card here for my review of the King James Version Concord wide margin. Go ahead and watch that, and you'll see a comparison between this Bible and the New King James Version wide margin, and that'll get you a better feel for the King James Version of the wide margin. It's essentially these same dimensions. It's just thicker, and it uses the Concord text. So imagine that you take this Concord text and add a wide margin and make it this same footprint and size, and slightly thicker because it's got a great paper in it. And that would be the difference between the King James Version wide margin and all the other version wide margins. But we'll compare all the other wide margins because they're more ubiquitous than the King James Version. The King James Version is kind of on its own. So we have the wide margin here, and we'll compare it to the Turquoise. Oh, look at all that red. Oh, there we go. So big difference here. Obviously, you know, you have center column references on both. This is a newer typesetting versus this older one, but this font eats this font all day, every day for breakfast. This is just a lighter font. It's more modern. It's cleaned up, and it just doesn't compare, though, as far as size and darkness is concerned. This outdoes it time and time again. So again, it depends. If you're looking to take notes, obviously the wide margin is going to suit you better than this Turquoise because there's very limited space here on the margins. So I guess it just kind of depends what you're going for. If you're looking for a wide margin, you're going to have to kind of resort to the wide margin. But if you're looking for something as far as like large and readable, the wide margin might not be the best choice. You might want to go with the Topaz or the Turquoise in that regard. So let's compare sizes real quick. We'll look at the ribbons. You get two black ribbons that are dinky on the wide margins. Dinky, that's a good word for them. Now, as far as all of this goes, the wide margin obviously is going to be wider because it's a wide margin. Go figure. Now, as far as height goes, the Turquoise here is slightly taller and slightly thicker. Now, again, if this was the wide margin King James Version, which is the Concord wide margin, that would be thicker than the Turquoise here. But you know, for this comparison, you saw where it is. So you have that. Let's compare this to the Concord, and you can see here also that the Concord even trumps this as far as size goes. So this would be a smaller, more portable edition of the Concord. You know, obviously you lose the margin space; it's gone. But on the benefit is that you I don't know where I was going. You gain wide margins here. You know, you have wide margins here. You have bolder, thicker, larger font here. So again, it just depends. Wide margin, it depends what you're going to do. So, but just for comparison's sake, and we'll compare sizes right quick. And then I think I will grab the wide margin Concord. I said I wasn't going to, but I think I will, only because, it's a Concord. Why not compare Concords to Concords? And I'll have to do a Concord review video one of these days. But there's obviously going to be a huge size difference between the Concord and the wide margin, because, night and day. Although the only thing that seems to be similar is the width, or the thickness, excuse me. So give me 1 second and let me grab the Concord wide margin so I can compare it for you guys. All right, so this is the Concord wide margin, and this is a different leather. This is a calf split, so it looks a little bit different. But what we're going to do is we'll open it up to just a random page, 125, and we'll demonstrate here that the pagination is the same on both because this uses the Concord text. So there you have page 125. We'll put it on the right. And you have page 125 here, and you can see that it all matches up. So you have in cleansing of the leper, in cleansing of the leper, Leviticus 14, and it ends on verse 31, shall make. Right? So the pagination is exactly the same between the two. This is a slightly downsized Concord. So they are not the same text size. The text size here is bigger in the original Concord, the normal Concord. In the wide margin Concord, the text has been slightly reduced over this text size. So interesting to note, the pagination is the same, but the text size is different. Bigger here, smaller here. So let's take a look real quick at the thickness, and that'll be it. I'll wrap up this long video. Sorry guys, apologies. So there you can see the thickness difference. This is a little bit thicker than the Concord, and the other wide margins, it's a little thicker as well than those. So Bible buddies, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, wondering why I have all these Cambridge Bibles, please feel free to ask and leave the comments and everything all down below. Otherwise, until next time, Bible buddies, read your Bibles. Bye.